And we're back. Welcome to the cloudy days. So I am Brian. I'm with Michael. A little bit about myself. I'm Brian Anthony Garcia. I am a senior consultant at Telstra Purple, and I'm a Microsoft MVP for developer technologies and Azure. How about you, Michael? How are you?
All right. Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. Thanks for asking, Brian. So, hi, welcome back. Episode 2, I believe. I'm Michael, but these days they call me MJ, Microsoft MVP for Azure and AI. Currently running a data practice at Playtime Solutions. And on the side, I'm also doing training as MCT.
Yeah, great. Well, actually, let me correct myself. I'm not a developer technologies MVP anymore. It's just Azure, and hopefully still is by next year. But yeah, well, it's been a great week last week. There's a lot of announcements. Obviously, it
Yep.
was Ignite. Ignite was fun.
Yeah.
A lot of it I did enjoy. A lot of it I didn't really care about. But one thing I noticed is that it really revolves around the AI space.
Yeah.
Most of it are either AI related or
Copilot
AI
or,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And even though they're not really AI related, they still find a way to relate it to AI. An example of it, I would say, maybe it is AI related, but let's say, the Azure Functions Flex
Hmm.
consumption. They added intelligent apps built with Azure Functions when
Yeah.
using Flex consumption. So, they really are, going big with AI. So, yeah,
Hmm.
big week for you and your AI friends.
Yeah, for sure. Yes. Yeah. Although full disclosure, because we're MVPs, right? So a bunch of it I already know prior to the announcement, or prior to Ignite. But it was still nice to see the reaction, especially looking at LinkedIn, people reacting on those different announcements, positive and negative, right?
Yeah, yeah. I was checking the keynote earlier today, and I saw that. The ratio of dislikes isn't or likes and dislikes isn't too bad, but it's not really as good as well. But I heard a lot of good news. Honestly, I liked some of it, even though it's not something that I would usually
Mm.
check out. It really is still a great week for Microsoft. I think they announced a lot of good stuff. I would like to go through some of it. Actually, we're looking at one now. Start off with the Copilot actions.
Yeah.
So it is something. They said that it's kind of like similar to Outlook rules. I'm not sure if you're aware of it or familiar with it, but it kind of gives you like a way to set set of actions to maybe send messages, emails, autorespond.
Mm.
It's not really for us developers. Maybe it is something that we can utilize as someone who works in corporate or sometimes someone who works with colleagues, but it's not something that I'd probably use. It's just a cool thing. I mean,
Yeah.
AI related. It's AI.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think this just shows that tools like email and Outlook, right? We've been
Yeah.
using that since forever. Yeah, and it's just going through that wave of AI, right? Like, how do we actually use these technologies in some of those established
Yes.
platforms and technologies?
Yeah. Yep. And then the next one's agents. So this one's big.
Mm.
I've heard agents in a lot of sessions, and I
Yep.
think you're pretty aware of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think this one, agents in 365, is like an easier way to build it. We said that it's kind of like something
I-
that you can build by just providing like a set of KBs. Like,
Yep.
yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah. This is very interesting, right? Because I've seen where it came from, and you probably know where it came from as well, right? Remember the days back in bot builder,
Yeah,
Lewis,
yeah,
and
yeah.
stuff like that. So it started from there, and then it went to the Power Platform side, and then they created this thing called Power Virtual Agents, and then from there they changed it to this and that. So it's not like it's totally new, right? It
It's
came
not.
from probably like 12, 15 years of iteration,
Yeah, yeah.
right? Since then, and now it came to a point wherein, because of the advancement of LLMs and Microsoft really
Mm.
testing this out in their particular set of products, right? Now this just kind of like create those I would say natural extensions
Yeah.
or natural capabilities of these products, right? Like a lot of this is something you can do by creating a extension or custom app, custom
Mm-hmm.
this, custom that, and that building process of its own is takes time, right? And it obviously needs to be aware of your data, needs to be a packaging model here and there. But what this is doing now is yeah, again, just natural extension in a way that's going through that agentic route,
Yeah.
meaning like task driven.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I actually, since you mentioned it, I actually remember something back in maybe 8 years ago. You built something, it's kind of like a virtual agent. And, like you said, it is something that has been existing for a long time now. And a lot of people might not know or might not, recognize it. But some websites, you will notice that there's actually agents there. It's just built in a different way. Agents
Yeah.
now, like agents that we're talking about here, is much more powerful.
Yep.
Less,
Much more
requires,
capable.
yeah, less effort to build. But yeah, it's still here. It's still the same agents. Just again, a lot powerful.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's the one that I mentioned earlier, that where you can easily build
Yeah.
these, agents now. It's not really specifically this one. It's not really that you're building agents, but rather you're building. No, actually, it is agents, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you can do agents, you can do plugins, you can do this and that. So it's kind of like a hub where the non-developers, right, can actually
Yeah.
just use, and you can kind of like catalog that across your organization, right? Let's say
Yeah.
we're under the same organization, I can create an agent that does time sheeting, right? And then
Mhm.
you can just use that same agent or same co-pilot for that one. So yeah.
But this one, I believe, is a no-code one.
Yes,
You can
a
just
no code.
provide
Yeah,
it
no
clearly.
code.
So it's kind of like a Power Automate
Yeah,
to an
it's
admin
it's
function.
Power. Yeah, it's Power Virtual Agent. I believe that was
Mm.
what it was called back then.
Yeah, it is exciting. At least it is something that will allow like non-developers, citizen developers, to just build their own agents and won't need any developers to build one for them, which is nice. Yeah. And then this one, I just want to bring up this one because I was, I jumped out of my seat because I thought that, oh wow, they just have because if you remember, we do have those Windows 8 applications. I
Yeah.
thought that you can now port them, and I don't. And it's funny because why would they even do that? Like, what's the point? There's no point of doing
Yeah.
that. So I just realized, oh, it's a Windows app. There's a Windows app that is available in
Uh,
Windows and I believe in Mac as well. Now it's gonna be in
What?
Android.
What does it do? Like what's this Windows app on
It's
Android?
like
So
you can access like VMs. I believe you can. It's a whole thing where you can access like your own VMs remotely
Ah.
in an app. So I'm not
Mm.
100% familiar with that, but I just found out that there's this Windows app. I just really wasn't aware of like what it does, specifically. But yeah, there's an app that apparently it's being ported to Android as well. Yeah. And then this one. This
Mm.
one caught my eye, and I'll be
Yeah.
honest. Also not familiar with, or I wasn't aware of what it does. until I saw it, but it really just caught my eye because it looked like a Mac Mini, and
Mac Mini. Yeah.
yeah, I thought that because there was an announcement, or they kind of like, or Apple kind of like pushed the Mac Mini again, and it became more
With
apparent.
AI, right?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
became more apparent to people. Oh, there's Mac Mini, but obviously Mac Mini
But this
has
is
been around
different,
for a long
yeah.
time. But yeah, this is a lot different, right, Michael?
Yeah. This is different. So, based from my limited knowledge, right, the 365 Link is the same. It's again, it's a virtualization technology. So it's not a hardware per se, meaning it's not like a Mac Mini where you can install apps, install games, and so on, right? This is a Windows 365 Link. Like from the name itself, it's just a link to the cloud. So everything else is running in the cloud.
Yeah.
So think of it like if you're familiar with Xbox Game Pass, GitHub Code Spaces, right? So the workload or the CPU, the GPU, and everything is happening on the cloud.
Yeah.
And then this is just a way for you to interface through that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so-
and I watched a quick video of that one wherein the idea there is that the two of us can use the Windows 365 link, and my session is always persisted in the cloud. So when you log in, your session is different. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought it was gonna be like I'm gonna be able to, you know, see,
No,
see
no.
what you up to, like since
No.
we're gonna see the same session. I see. That's how.
Yeah.
it
So you can't even see the resources that's running
Mm.
on my end, right? Like compared to, let's say we're sharing the same server or same VM. If I do a alt control delete, I can actually see, like oh, who are the other users running this and that. But this one's different. It's like literally it's just a portal to the cloud, right? It's just an interface to the
But
cloud. Yeah.
It is much more secure because I think that's
Yes.
one of the things that they were boasting
Yep.
about this one. You know, you can stream Windows from the cloud, but it is very secure.
Yeah.
And I think that's
Yep.
yeah. And I think the price point of this was around $359 US dollars.
Yeah. That would be good. Yeah,
and
that's actually not bad.
it's funny because
Yeah.
they could probably just given it $365, so it, stay true to its name.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, along with that is the Azure logo. And, man, again, I have nothing to say about this one. You probably have a
Yeah.
lot of things to say about this.
Yeah, so I had a short experience back then, I think around 2019, dealing with on-prem or edge compute in the Microsoft space, right? So back then there was this thing called Azure Stack Edge, which is like literally a physical device that Microsoft ships to you, right? Like you get this edge device, and like it has a GPU, and like it can connect to an Azure IoT edge and
Uh-huh.
stuff like that. But this one's a bit different. So since 2019, so that was like 6 years now, right? Almost 6 years, right? Since then, the technology has changed. Right? Like basically the hardware. So Microsoft is not focusing on the hardware. There are already a lot of established manufacturers out there, Dell, HP, and all those vendors, right? They're the one providing the hardware, but what this means is that it's always connected to the cloud one way or the other. It's the technology behind this is very similar to virtual. Again, this is a virtualization technology, right?
Yeah.
That means that you can just do your compute storage on edge, but let's say the orchestration, or let's say your control plane is still in Azure. So what that means is that think of it like just a server or a cluster
Yeah.
within your Kubernetes or something like that, right? But because it's Azure, there are also different services that you can run locally. Think of it like you can run an Azure Functions locally. You can also do like a container app in locally and stuff like that. But you can visualize all of them in Azure. So so there's also a mix of this technology called Azure Arc.
Yeah, that's
So
what I was gonna say,
yeah,
because that's
yeah,
from what I thought, this was kind of like them bringing the Azure Arc all the way to the edge
yes,
applications.
correct. Yeah. Again, this is not new. It's been around for a while. It's just a different branding,
Yeah. I
different
see. I see.
you know
Yeah, it's a new brand.
repackaging, yeah,
Yeah.
of things.
But yeah,
Yeah.
just to clarify, this is not a hardware. This is it's not.
No,
Okay.
it's not a hardware. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Because the next few ones that we're gonna be talking about, I thought
No, that's a
were
hardware.
Oh, okay, okay. These are hardwares. Okay, okay. So
Yeah.
um, I don't think we have to go through all of this, but it's just something that something that I was curious about. Um, but yeah, that seems to be like something that's gonna be available as a dedicated chip. For,
Yeah.
like, the,
Especially if you're in an IS space for a while. Once in a while, every year or so, there's a new chip who's like 10 times faster, 35% faster, so on and so forth. And like Azure just brings them to, to Azure as a VM, right? Again, you're still in an IS space. But if you're in a PaaS or SaaS, like you wouldn't care, right? But if you're in an IS space, like you've come to a point where in like a specific hardware makes sense for your specific application because you're gonna benefit like 300 times or something, right? And your workload is like gazillion stuff, then that's when you go to this specialized hardware for those specific reasons.
Yeah, and there's also this other one actually. It's called the NVIDIA Blackwell. But
Yeah.
I didn't include it here, but it's also something like that. But yeah, I heard a lot of these are they wouldn't be announced if they were not powerful. But I've heard that the one of these is I think the Boost GPU. It's uses 3 times less the power, but it's 4 times more faster, whatever that means. But that's what it does apparently. So yeah, pretty cool stuff. And then I think one of the things that we're excited about.
Yes, this is the highlight for me. Yeah, Fabric databases. All right. So for those who doesn't know, Fabric again is a SaaS-based solution introduced by Microsoft for your data analytics workload, right? So
and
think of it like
was it announced like 2 years ago or just a year ago? It's fairly new, right?
Yeah, just last year. Yeah, just last year as GA last year, right? It was announced public preview 2 years ago. Went GA last year. Now it's just 1 year old, and now they've announced a new public preview, which is Fabric database. Again, they're moving so fast, man. They're so fast. It's hard to keep up. So again, Fabric is when it was conceptualized and it was kind of like went to the market, it's a analytical workload. So what that means is that it's not meant for your transactional workload. So in the classic data warehousing term, we have this thing called OLTP, which stands for transactional database.
Yeah.
Azure SQL, Cosmos DB, MongoDB, you name it, right? They're transactional database. And then you have OLAP, which is analytical database. You have, in the past, you have Azure SQL Data Warehouse, you have SSAS, SSIS, SSRS, that whole stuff like that. Then, obviously, Power BI came in, Azure Synapse came in, and now that whole end-to-end scenario of data warehouse and data engineering, lakehouse, and everything, they packaged that in a SaaS-based solution, right? And that's Microsoft Fabric. Now, what's different this time around is that Fabric database is a SaaS OLTP.
So it's
all right?
It's
a transactional database. Yeah, so think of it like your Azure SQL.
I was gonna say. So is it?
Yeah,
like
Azure
SQL
SQL.
Fabric?
It is. It is an Azure SQL brought into, right? It's brought into Fabric in a SaaS model.
So are you saying that it's really just Azure? Is it just SQL, an Azure SQL that is repackaged as a Fabric database, or?
Okay, all right. All right, so this is very clever, right? Like how they designed this. So before Fabric database, they had this technology called database mirror, right? They have this concept database mirroring. So what that means is that if you have an Azure SQL database, right, using Fabric will do a mirror of that one. So what that means is that Fabric will create a replica of that Azure SQL.
Okay.
Right? So that you don't have to copy the data from your Azure SQL to Fabric anymore. So it's like there's a real-time or near real-time replica of that Azure SQL database. So when you insert a new record in your Azure SQL, periodically that gets sent to Fabric, right? And then the beauty of Fabric is that it's not stored in a SQL Server engine, so it's stored in a Delta Parquet file. So it's a different format, basically, right? So that's mirroring. Now what they've done here is that they've gone beyond mirroring. So what happens is that Fabric, basically what happens is that Fabric talks to Azure control plane through ARM, Resource Manager, and say, hey Azure, I need a SQL database. Right? I don't need a SQL server. I don't need a subscription. I don't need a resource group. I just need a SQL database.
I see. Okay.
Right? And then Azure will spin up that SQL database. And then what happens that mirroring technology is still in there. So Fabric still has a mirror of that SQL database for OLAP. So you get 2 in 1. Right? You get the transactional database where you can do your heavy, write, like real time, right? And then you have OLAP, which is the heavy reads, like doing analytical stuff with Power BI and things like that. You get them 2 in 1 in the same workspace, right? And then you can share the same capacity, right? So the pricing model here is that you're not paying an Azure subscription through a SQL server. You're now paying Fabric. It's like you're renting that Azure SQL through Fabric in that capacity. So that's why it's very, very novel what they've done. That's why Fabric is now more than just analytical workload. It can now support this.
I was gonna say, is this kind of like a really big thing for Fabric?
It is, yeah. It is. Think of it like this. It's a start with SQL, Azure SQL. Next would be, I'm guessing, I don't have info. I'm guessing, think of like Cosmos DB, Postgres, and everything in a SaaS model, right? So think of it that way, right? If you look at Supabase and all those, PlanetScale, you can spin up, or like Firebase or things like that. You can spin up an actual robust database based from a PaaS model in a SaaS model, right? So that's how.
It's
yeah.
I feel like it would be a big thing for you guys. Is it currently still public preview, right?
It's public preview, yes, and and then Fabric also comes with this GraphQL server. So that means that what it means for a developer is that now with the GraphQL built in Fabric, you can connect that through the OLTP and an OLAP database. And then a developer can just, get data, push data, and so on. Right? And then...
no, I was going to say that because I have a look at Microsoft Fabric one time, and you have this thing called One Lake, right? And this this is included there, like that would be that would be in so this open source format for
Delta Parquet, Delta Parquet. Yeah. So the Azure SQL still sits on Azure, right? So the data being inserted on Azure SQL or in the Fabric database still sits in Azure, right? But then the replication, the mirror, is in Delta Parquet in OneLake.
Yeah.
Right? And then when you're talking to Fabric database, technically you're still inserting the record to Azure, right? But the copy or the replication is the one that's stored in OneLake. That's why. And in the future, I'm pretty sure it's gonna go there, right? There's going to be connection to Power Platform, Power Apps, this and that, like you'll have a full no code, you know, SaaS model in Microsoft. That's like but then the foundation is PaaS, which is good, right? So it's not like SaaS, but there's no, yeah, there's nowhere to go beyond that. Um,
Yeah. But no, I usually think of this like, it's a good thing that you have this unified, platform. But, you know, don't you worry about like it being really humongous that they're adding these new features? Or is it necessary? Is it really necessary to have? I'm not talking about
I
this
think
one
yes.
specifically, but
Yeah.
the one you just mentioned that,
Yeah.
to the Power Platform, connect integration,
Yeah.
and all that.
I think yes, right? The whole value proposition of Fabric is still, it's your heart, it's the heart of your data,
Yeah.
right? Like, let's say you want to go Gen AI from an Azure SQL data, right? Like you now have options wherein, do I store my vector data through Azure SQL? Do I do that through Fabric? What if I want to do some data sanitation?
Yeah.
Or what if I need to do some Power BI reporting as well? What if I need to use Purview for data governance?
Yeah.
And like,
Mm.
it's all connected through Fabric, right? Like one way or the other. And what if like I want to send an email when someone reached this certain temperature or this certain data point? I want to connect to Microsoft Graph. What if I want to connect to, the other capabilities, Dataverse with my CRM, right? So I think, yeah, like Fabric is doing that open close model, wherein like, hey, it's open for you to go here, so that the other close models becomes open.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
so-
Yeah. Well, we could have like a focused discussion of Fabric because it's
Yeah.
really huge. I honestly just started learning it a couple months ago just to kind of like get into the new, and I see that I understand the hype. It's really like
Yeah.
a nice thing to have, especially like when I
i-
solve the
if-
problems.
If you think, just look at other SaaS-based solutions out there, right? Snowflake, Databricks,
Mm-hmm.
SAP, Salesforce.
Yeah.
Think of all of that combined,
Yeah.
right? And think of that 10 years from now, where that could be, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I'm really advocating people to look at Fabric. Like, this is what you should be looking at. And if you're like looking for opportunity, where to grow, this is, an area for you to look at. Yeah,
I see. I see.
it's gonna be as big as bigger than Salesforce, bigger than SQL Server, bigger than Cosmos DB, bigger than AI search, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like, yeah, I don't know. It's
I think the learning curve for that is much more easier rather than
Yeah.
having to learn like different platforms, different services. Like it just makes things easier. That's what I liked about it because you have this just one-stop shop to do everything, and it's just really organized. And I think that's the problem that they're solving anyways. A lot of those
Yeah.
things, all the pain points that they found with the all this data related issues. But yeah, like I said, we can have another discussion for this. But I know you're really excited for this one.
yeah,
And
very very excited. Yeah.
yeah, I think the next one is also something that you're really happy about. And
Yeah,
is it something that you just learned as well, or is it like you have prior knowledge to this before?
Yeah, I have prior knowledge to this, but I just didn't know the name, right?
I see. I see.
So before Azure AI Foundry, it was called Azure AI Studio, right? As any AI capability in Azure, it's always like a studio, right? Like, Visual Studio, Copilot Studio,
Yeah, I heard
ML
of AI
Studio, and
I heard of
everything,
AI
right?
Studio before, so that's the exact same one apparently. I didn't know.
Yeah, but if you remember, 4 years ago, what started this studio thing was Azure ML, right? ML Studio, and then from there was Azure OpenAI, so that's why there's an Azure OpenAI Studio, and then turns out it's not just OpenAI doing LLMs. What if you have Meta, you have this, you have that? Then you came up with AI Studio.
Yeah.
And now, what if it's not just about LLMs? What if we're also talking about other modalities, other capabilities? Like, what if I want to do search? What if I want to do connectivity with an SDK? What if I want to
Mm-hmm.
do like agents, custom coded agents, like a pro developer agent, cataloging them and stuff. And so, what if I want to do observability? What if I want to fine tune a Meta Llama LLM, right, and so on. So it's again just a foundation of everything.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it's called Foundry.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because when I first look at this, you know what? Because I just recently learned the Fabric, and I thought, is this something that they're also like doing the same way as they did Fabric, or is it not?
Not really. This is,
Okay.
if you come to think of it, it's still like a PaaS or platform as a service offering, wherein
Uh-huh.
like these are still around. Like, hey, here's your Azure OpenAI, here's your AI search, here's your this, your that. So there's still a level of disconnectedness, but they're still packaged together, connectedness through a hub concept with AI Foundry,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, it's more like a packaging technology. It's not a SaaS model of its own. Yeah.
I also heard that there's like this kind of like a unit test evaluation.
Mm, yeah.
Like features.
Observability. Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah. So that means that, yeah, like what if, like how do you measure if your LLM is accurate, right? Like in the wild, right? Like let's say how do you ensure that it's not saying the bad stuff, and so on and
yeah.
so forth, right? Yeah. So that's why they've built those foundational observability as well, so that again, us as developers will just focus on our use case, or in if we're doing a LLM or agent or chatbot or whatever it is on a specific business domain, we'll just focus on building that. All of the underlying necessities, even compliance and stuff like that, Microsoft is doing that for us.
See. Right. And yeah, I think honestly, I mean, I watched like a video, like they have this ad of this AI Foundry. It's kind of like the, 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 the idea of the video is just to show like how easy it is to collaborate with the help of the AI Foundry.
Mm.
Yeah, and again, like I said, it's kind of like I mentioned, it is a hub. So that's the reason why I thought it was kind of like a Microsoft Fabric.
Mm.
They have similarities, but obviously it's different. But apart from this, also there's this. Well, these are like
Yeah,
models that they mentioned.
it's more around just within AI Foundry. They've just expanded the catalog pretty much, right? Again, they went beyond just Azure OpenAI. Although Azure OpenAI itself keeps on improving, right? Now we have GPT-4 o1 preview, which allows you to do real-time conversation,
Mm-hmm.
right? You can do speech RAG. Speech RAG stands for retrieval augmented generation, but with speech. You can talk to it in Spanish, and then it's gonna come back with English based from a knowledge base somewhere. So yeah, it's a really good time to be a developer in that space.
Yeah. Well, we're going back to agents again, and like I said earlier, agents is kind of like a big thing in this Ignite. So
Yeah,
this one's kind of different.
this is pro. This is,
This-
yeah, compared to Copilot Studio, this is more like pro AI agents, right?
Yeah.
Like meaning custom coded using lang
Mhm.
chain, semantic kernel, all those different pro developer tools and orchestration and capabilities.
Mhm.
And I think what really makes it a bit different, Bri, is around the proness of this. Like, um, especially if you're trying to serve a B2C or a customer scenario rather than just internally used agents, right? So there's
Okay.
that level of observability that you need. There's a level of accuracy, groundness that you need. That's why but at the same time, you don't want to create your own Azure Container Registry, right? You don't
Mhm.
want to create your own Docker Hub. That's why you have this.
I see.
You have Azure AI Agent Service as part of AI Foundry.
This, yeah, I was gonna say it's part of the AI Foundry.
Yeah.
But can you still use this separately by its own? By itself?
I don't think so. I think you need you need the AI Foundry. Again, that collection of hub and project, it's consolidated within Foundry.
I see. All right, and then this one, like I mentioned, you know,
Mhm.
the university governance, and it's kind of like you being able to generate reports as well. It's
Yeah, just think of it like having your own GitHub Enterprise instance. Yeah, like that's a good analogy, right? Like this is a place where you store not just your code. Well, I mean GitHub, right? Like if you do GitHub Enterprise, it's a place for you to store your code, your artifacts, so on and so forth. But this one, like think of it like Azure AI Foundry is like a centralized place for an organization to put everything about AI. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that's all for the Azure AI Foundry. The next one's well, let's jump onto the intelligent apps. They call it the Azure App Platform. So this one, there's in this specific session, they had a lot of customer success stories, but I don't even really care about it. I wanted to just go straight ahead to the product announcements. And like I said, it is something that we discussed last episode as well. You know, they're really pushing this intelligent apps. You know, before it was app modernization, but it still is. You know, it's just there's an added zing to it. The AI is kind of like the added thing, and so it became intelligent apps. So one of the things that they announced is there's not really much of a change here. It's just really an
Yeah, it's
organized
still the
suite
same.
or a catalog of
Yeah.
offer you how to build an intelligent app, which at, at least for me it is. These are very familiar. These are things that I use.
Before AI or intelligent apps, this is called cloud native. Right?
Yeah.
Just think of it that way. Right? This is
Yeah.
just cloud
If you-
native.
If
Like,
you remove the AI
meaning-
portfolio part, that's kind of
Yeah. But obviously, I think we're way past cloud native. That was probably a 2014 thing.
Yeah.
when everyone's doing their Azure functions, their serverless, their lambdas, and everything, right?
That's-
Container
that's-
workloads.
That's more of
Yeah.
2020 for me. It's for you
Yeah,
2014, then for me 2020.
2014, 2016, yeah, 2015-ish, 16. And then now, it's same stuff, but different packaging, and now we have AI, we have, this, and that. And now that's your intelligent apps.
Yeah.
But it's cloud native underneath.
Yeah, like you said, it's more rebranding, repackaging, rather than there's really nothing new in this. So
Well,
yeah, apart from
obviously
that-
there are new stuff, right? Like, I mean, we shouldn't discount that. Yeah, like for example, the Azure AI services, right?
Oh, yeah,
Back
yeah.
then, cognitive services, the foundations were there, right? As
Mhm.
APIs of these models, right? But since then, if you look at, let's say, document intelligence in Azure AI, like I was super surprised. Like it was able to do almost like I don't know, from the 10 pages of handwritten notes that I did, it was able to spot on everything.
I
Uh,
see.
Yeah, so there's still a lot of improvements, and obviously container apps is not new, but like it's a default way of things these days as well.
Yeah, they're really
Postgre,
pushing it too.
yeah, Postgres, which is having a lot of I would say traction within Azure itself. So it's not just about Azure SQL anymore.
But it's not really
yeah.
new, right? It's not like a major
Yeah.
announcement that they made in Ignite. It's been around. It's fairly new. I guess it's
Yeah.
only the AI Foundry that's really new here. But
Yeah, but even AI Foundry, if you look at it from last year, it's just AI Studio, right? So technically,
I wasn't
there's
paying
nothing
attention last
new.
yeah. Yeah, but But yeah, I mean, it works and it's been working for them, like marketing this or pushing this. And I think with the AI, the surge of AI right now, it's gonna be a lot more bigger. Especially, I think the intelligent apps
Yeah.
is really like a really good title.
Do you know why? Because think of it this way, right?
Mhm.
The IS to PaaS migration is over, or even the on-prem to IS. That was the lift and shift era, right? And then from IS to PaaS, that was the cloud native era.
Yeah.
Now, when everyone is on PaaS, what's next,
Mhm.
right? Now this, right? Now, how do we modernize into this AI world? And that's the intelligent apps
Yeah,
migration path.
so
Yeah.
you're basically saying that if you haven't lived and shipped up to now, like it's already 2024, what are you doing? What are you still there? You should be there
Yeah.
in this intelligent apps era. So yeah. So a few things about that's related to this app platform. One thing is this AI app gallery. It's really I think for me it's really nice. I'm not really a beginner, but
Yeah.
you said that it is something that beginners can start with AI. I think I would do some stuff here just for me to kind of like even
Yeah.
as a seasoned developer, this kind of allows
Yeah,
me
of
to
course.
just go through a set of repos and IACs
Uh,
to
Yeah, again, exactly right. So as I was mentioning earlier, so we're going from that cloud native to IA era. Now, what does that mean is that you need to understand those paths, those different pathways, right? Like I have container apps, I have Cosmos DB. Then how do I put some AI? I am in SQL managed instance, or I have it. I am using Redis. How do I go there, right? Like again, those different scenarios, different use cases, different frameworks as well. Like even on the code level, you might want to use Llama Index. Do you want to use semantic kernel? Do you want to use JavaScript, Python, everything? Right? That's why, yeah, you're just trying to look for templates and knowledge base
yeah.
to go from where you are to the next thing, right?
Yeah. So it's this just really more of getting started. You won't expect this to
Hmm.
kind of like be something that's gonna be in.
Even complex scenarios, it's in there. Like let's say you have a very complex infrastructure. You have like on-prem capabilities and like so on. You would find templates around that.
Yeah, I haven't seen the catalog, but I'm
Yeah.
sure they have that. I have those. Yeah. The next one's really a quick one. So it's the Azure Functions Flex consumption. I think this is kind of like initially it was a bit confusing to me. I guess it's still a consumption plan, but with a larger scale of flexibility. Is that kind
Yeah,
of it?
yeah. It's very confusing, especially with functions, right? Because functions, when it started, it was kind of like a pay-as-you-go model, and then several iterations happened since then, right? Like there is now an app service model. There's a this model. I can't remember all of them, um, and now there's a flex consumption. Yeah, to be honest, I'm not super duper sure
Yeah.
of what this does, right? And again, this is one of those things wherein you must have already been consuming functions, or when you're trying to design a function on a specific way, that you would know that okay, it's better to use flex versus this versus that versus the other one.
Yeah, I
Right.
don't even know if it's gonna replace the existing consumption plan. Maybe not. It's just
I
an
don't think
additional
so.
option.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they did mention here it's serverless, but it's always been serverless. So I don't know
Yeah,
why
but
they
yeah, maybe in the future we can talk more about this.
Yeah.
But in my headspace at the moment, my preference is to host Azure Functions in Azure Container Apps. That's my preference at the moment, right? If
Yeah.
I have multiple apps running, and I just need let's say a simple cron job doing specific stuff on the side, then I'll be going to the container apps approach rather than this. Again, we can talk more about that in
We
the
can talk
future.
about the Azure functions in general in the next maybe session.
Yeah.
And this one is really just a quick one. You have any ideas?
Yeah, yes. So, okay, so Azure OpenAI, obviously it comes with two to three things, right? The endpoint, meaning, the URL that you're trying to hit to call an Azure OpenAI instance, and second is the key, right? To consume that API. Now, the third aspect of that is tokens, meaning someone might abuse the API and smash this, and you need a level of governance around Azure OpenAI. And APIM was positioned to do that. So APIM was kind of like a way for you to do like a reverse proxy of your Azure OpenAI endpoint, right? And then from there, it came with other Azure OpenAI specific features, things like model and token routing, semantic caching. Let's say you and I has been asking the LLM the same stuff, so instead of consuming more tokens for that, so APIM can come back with similar answers for both of us, so without having to traverse to Azure OpenAI twice, right? So it comes with a lot of those, I would say, reverse proxy smartness, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was mainly, for the observability purpose and caching, but that's only because that's what I heard when they were discussing this. But I guess just once a quick one, really, it's just really dynamic sessions. You don't really have to talk about this really. And then this one, the GPU. Is this big for you? Like,
it would make sense for okay, so where this is going is that, because again, AI, right? Some workloads, again, there are primarily in AI, there are like three primary workloads, right? You have the training, when you're training a model, you have the experiments when you're running experiments and so on, and then you have an inference, meaning you're now launching this in production. So, but let's say you're not doing training, you're not doing experiments, you're just inferencing. Let's say you want to get a specific LLM hosted somewhere, let's say a CUDA or Phi tree, something like that, and you want to use container apps for that one. And there you go, right? Because they are specific for GPU purposes.
Yeah.
So
that's what I was thinking. If you need GPU, this seems like it is serverless. You can easily scale or use a GPU rather than starting up an actual GPU or an actual VM that uses a GPU. This you can turn it off. You can use a GPU whenever you want, and you can leave it be without the GPU when we don't need it anymore. So
correct. Yes.
But I'm not 100% familiar with this yet. It's still in public preview, so we'll see. So actually, we do have a lot of things to talk about with the Ignite. I feel like we're gonna have a part 2. I still have a lot of things that I wanted to discuss. So let's have a part 2. But now let's jump to TikTok time. All right. So we're now jumping into the TikTok time. Are you ready, Michael?
Yep, ready.
Yeah. Well, this one is more of like a set of questions, telling 2 truths and 2 lies, or rather 1 lie, and it's Azure in general. So it depends on like which one you think is.
Is this subjective or absolute truths, or it's?
This is absolute truth.
Okay.
These are descriptions of services.
Okay, so this is fact based, right? It's not just opinion, subjective stuff.
Yeah, unless there's some updates that happen. But these are mainly like general stuff that you would know, or you should know. So let's start off with the first one. So Azure Virtual Networks allow you to create isolated networks within Azure. B, Azure SQL database can scale out horizontally across multiple regions, or C, Azure Cognitive Search. See, this is so outdated now. It's not cognitive search anymore.
It's AI
Enables
search.
AI powered indexing and querying of your content. So which ones do you think is a lie?
This-
Definitely, there are two truths in here.
yeah,
There's just
there
single
are
one
two
that's a
treats
lie.
here. I okay. Yeah, actually, it's tricky for me, to be honest, Brian,
Uh-huh.
because if the basis for C is because it's now called AI search, that could be a lie,
Mhm.
right? But
Okay.
obviously, if it's Azure AI search, it enables AI powered indexing and querying of your content, which is truth.
So
Right.
I'm gonna give you. I'm gonna give you. Since it's my mistake. I'm gonna give you. It. I just incorrectly wrote the Azure AI search. It should be AI search.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's not the answer, or that's the lie?
I'm not gonna tell you.
Okay. All right.
I mean, oh no, I'm just saying that it's accepted. Yeah, just think of
So
it as
that's
Azure AI search.
okay. All right. All right. I yeah, I think it's A. That's a lie.
Really?
I think. Wait. Well, okay. Isolated networks, obviously. That's a truth because you can either do it in subnet or multiple subnets or even a VNet. Basically, right? That's what a VNet is, and that's your intention, right? Why you're creating an isolated. You want to isolate that within Azure. Um, it's probably B because it's not really Azure SQL database that you're horizontally scaling. It's the server that you're going to do some horizontal scaling, and even so, right? If that's your approach, Azure SQL is probably not the right approach. You should have gone to Cosmos DB to begin with. So there again, I'm just saying Azure SQL Server can be scaled horizontally with a different approach, but I don't think there's a click of a button that would allow that
Mhm.
straight away. So I think B is the lie.
And you're correct.
Yeah.
It is B.
Yeah.
You did explain it in the middle of
Hmm.
it that it is Azure Cosmos DB that is supporting the horizontal scaling. So,
Yeah. Although you can still do Azure SQL horizontal scaling, but just a different approach, right? Like, for example, in managed instance, you can still create like a server cluster, one in one region and the other, and like you do some kind of like networking around that. But I guess the intention here is the Azure SQL database itself. It's not horizontally
Yeah.
scalable just by click of buttons. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so we jump into the next question. So again, two truths and a lie. Azure Monitor can only monitor Azure resources. B, Azure Key Vault supports storing keys, secrets, and certificates. And C, Azure Sentinel integrates with third-party security solutions like Palo Alto and Cisco.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm very definitive. It's A. Azure
Mhm.
Monitor can only monitor Azure resources. Mainly because I remember we talked about earlier about Azure Local, and obviously with Azure Arc as well, you can do stuff around AWS, GCP, on-prem, anywhere.
Mhm.
So I would rule out it's A. B, I'm pretty sure it's stack standard. You can store key secrets and certificates. C, like I would assume so that you can integrate with Palo Alto and Cisco and probably even other third-party security solutions. But yeah, I think it's A. It's more around just
It's A. And you're right. Yeah, it is A. Yeah. Okay. So that's really. I think C is too specific.
yeah.
So it says it Palo Alto and Cisco. I don't know if that gave it away, but yeah, I think you just know what really Azure Monitor can do. So Azure Monitor can also track on-premise and other cloud resources.
Again, this is that concept of single pane of glass or pane of glass, right? Like you can use Azure as your orchestrator, and like you can literally see everywhere, even if your resources are on-prem or on literally flying in an airplane or in ships, vessels, anywhere, right? Yeah.
Let's see. Yeah. And the next one is Azure DevOps supports building, testing, and deploying applications in any language. B. Azure Logic Apps can only be triggered using HTTP requests. C. Azure API management allows for rate limiting, quotas, and monitoring API usage.
C,
This
C is a
one
true,
seems
right? Like that C is the easy one, right? C is true. We just talked about that a while ago. APIM. Logic apps can only be triggered using HTTP requests. I don't think so. Yeah. I'm assuming you can probably. I would be surprised, right? I actually don't know the answer, but I'll be surprised if you can only trigger Azure Logic apps using HTTP, which I doubt, right? And the trick there is any language. Well, technically, you can store any code in DevOps, right? And you can basically use Windows, Ubuntu, and I think there's also Mac as your build agents. So, technically speaking, any language should work. So, yeah, I'm going with B just for my surprise, if ever, that it it only supports HTTP, right? So B is the lie.
And I'm gonna tell you, yeah, it's one of the easiest ones here. So it is the Azure Logic Apps because of course we can have schedulers, schedules. We have connectors that can trigger the Logic Apps. So
Yeah, but full disclosure, I don't use Logic apps that much to know, right?
Makes
Yeah.
sense. Yeah. Well, I've used it a couple of times, and yeah, I was able to, actually one time I was able to trigger it using like a tweet when I found that there's like tweets using the same
Keyword, yeah.
hashtag, and yeah, I was able to do some functions, or rather some process triggered by that. Yeah, and then I think this is the last one. Azure Cosmos DB guarantees less than 10 ms latency for read and write operations globally. B. Azure Blob Storage supports querying data using SQL-like syntax. Or C. Azure Table Storage is a key value NoSQL database optimized for large data sets.
Oh wow, this is hard, Brian.
Really?
Yeah, I think this is a bit hard.
I don't know. So again, sorry. So A, Azure Cosmos DB guarantees less than 10 ms latency for read and write operations globally. B, Azure Blob Storage supports querying data using SQL-like syntax. And C, Azure Table Storage is a key value NoSQL database optimized for large data sets. So I think if you, I'd say, you just think about it. It's not the. It is not. These are.
Oh
these are
wait,
easier
this is
ones.
tricky. You just made it tricky. I think it's C. That's a lie because key value NoSQL database optimized for large data sets. And again, even I myself, I won't be using Azure Table Storage for large data sets in a NoSQL manner. Again, I'll use Cosmos DB for that. A is probably true because it's planetary scale, it's fast, it's scalable. It's probably a question of cost for you later on. If can you support that 10 millisecond latency? I think yes. B.
You sure about that, Dave? About the B? You sure about the B?
B. Azure Blob Storage supports querying data using SQL-like syntax. Azure Blob Storage. Oh, wait. Yeah, I think it's B because Blob Storage is just files, right? I mean, why would you use SQL-like syntax for that one? Again, that's my assumption.
No, I don't know about you.
All right. So it's between B or C for me, right? It's more around like Azure Table Storage. It's not a key values pair, right? I'm pretty sure you can also use Azure Table Storage for other stuff besides key value pair. All right.
Remember, it's not just like we're just talking about the single description here. We're not really talking about the other things that it can do. But remember, we're only looking for the lie.
All right. We're just looking for the lie.
Because it might be true, and some other parts of it, or let's say the service can also do this, but also do that.
Yeah.
But still, both are true. But
Okay.
now you only look for the lie.
All right, so I think I'll go with because of that. I'll go with my gut take of B, just because maybe you can still do key value pair with Azure Table Storage. It's just that not my personal preference to use that if ever. So and then
Sure, would be.
yeah, it's probably B because blob storage. You're just storing files in there. It's storage. Why would you use SQL for that one? Um, yeah, that's
Yeah,
my.
it is B. It is B, yeah.
Mm.
So SQLite queries are supported in Azure Data Lake, not the blob storage. So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
of course,
that makes
yes.
sense.
Yeah, because when it's ADLS Gen 2, which is Azure Data
Mhm.
Lake, you now have the hierarchical namespace. Hence, you can
Mhm.
perform SQLite queries because you have that namespace concept. And that's why you can store Delta Parquet or Parquet files in there, and you can perform SQLite queries in ADLS.
Mhm.
There you go.
So,
I was
yeah.
overcomplicating letter C.
Oh yeah, yeah. Actually, that's not the last one. There's this
Oh.
last one right here. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So this question is about. I think it's related to networking. So, yeah. Let's start with letter A. Azure Front Door provides global load balancing and acceleration for web applications. B. Azure Traffic Manager operates at the transport layer, layer 4 of the OSI model. And C. Azure Express Route offers dedicated private connections from your on-premise network to Azure. So, which one is
Yeah.
the one?
By the way, networking in Azure is my weakness.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. Of all
Uh,
between compute, storage, networking, and probably resource management. Networking is my weakness. Like
I see.
yeah, but I'll make some educated guess here. Uh, letter C, I'm pretty sure that's correct. Express route is literally meant for that point-to-point connection, fast, dedicated. Um, front door, I think that's correct as well, just because of before Azure Static Web Apps. The way to do static app was to host that into a storage, and then using front door you can kind of like distribute that globally. So I think that's correct. B, just because I don't know, I know the OSI layer, OSI model. I just don't know this level of detail if it supports level layer 4. So I'll go with B.
Go with B. So it's, you kind of like deducted it.
Yeah.
So and you're right. Actually, you're right. Yeah. So it operates on the DNS layer, not the layer 4. So even on your like the weakest point or weakest link with Azure, you still got the right answer. So you got it 5 out of 5. Congratulations.
Wow, thanks. Again, for those who are watching, this is not scripted, so I didn't know the answers. That's why I was struggling a bit. I didn't even review or anything. But I think for those who are studying AZ 900, this would be like part of that fundamentals, I guess. Yeah.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think.
And honestly, while searching for these, I learned a few more stuff.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I should have known some of these already.
Yeah, the networking is always hard because there's an element of technical know-how versus compute where it's very straightforward most of the time. Like Azure something 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 that something something kind of like describes what it's doing. Same goes with storage, but when you go to networking, it's a traffic manager, but like what's a transport layer? What's a dedicated private connection? What's on-premise network? What's a subnet? What's this? What's IP peering and all those things, right?
Yeah. It's also one of my weakest points. One of my weakest points. It's not just a single one, but I that's kind of like what's stopping me from becoming a full cloud architect, I'd say. But it's it's something that I'd like to understand more. But yeah, do you have more time? Actually, I just forgot. We do have one more TikTok time, but if you have more time, we can proceed with that.
All right, yeah, let's do it.
So yeah, the next one is about this AI success stories that I just read because when I was going through the
Ignite.
Ignite sessions, yeah, they have some of these customer success stories, and I thought that, of course, not only Azure has those, also AWS. So not sure. Maybe you would identify which ones are Azure and which ones are AWS.
Yeah,
So
I
these
can
are,
do level of deduction as well, depending on
I
the
see.
partnership model
Mhm.
and the use case.
I see. Okay, so I'm just gonna give you companies,
Okay.
and you will tell me what do you think. Which one of these cloud providers do they represent?
All right.
So yeah. All right. Let's start off with BMW. What do you think? You might have. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's Azure. That's on Azure.
Why do you think that?
Because it's been a. I remember back in the days, BMW has Cortana as well built in, and then they've changed that. Obviously, that's just what I remember. There's Cortana in BMW back then.
I see. And BMW is Azure. Yes, you're right. So this has been, I think, just this year as well. They've used what do you call this? They've used tons of it. They've used tons of services from Azure, ranging from I think OpenAI, the AI services, and I believe even the AI Foundry as well.
Yeah.
So they've been using that for because they have engineers, and these engineers have a hard time learning KQL, Crystal Query, and they wanted to do some queries without having to write the KQL queries. And so what they did was they set up the KQL, they set up what do you call this? A GPT 4.0 on top of it. And so they can just talk to it like with an NLP, and then they can get the query or the response from the query that they want. So yeah, that's what they've done, but there's a lot more. I believe there's a lot more because that's just one of them that was mentioned here, which is nice. Yeah, next one is Ferrari.
I think that's an AWS one. Maybe Ferrari with Claude and Anthropic.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, honestly, I didn't even read. I didn't read what they did about it, but it is AWS. So
Yeah.
it seems like it's all about generative AI. A lot of these things I've seen is they're using the Sage.
Yeah. A SageMaker. Yeah.
SageMaker.
Yeah, SageMaker is kind of like it's kind of like by the way, for those who are listening, in terms of AI, between the three clouds, AWS, Azure, and GCP, that's where things are not like to like. But in terms of like storage and compute, VMs, Kubernetes, and like databases, most of them are like very similar.
They have
right?
equivalent.
Yeah.
They have
Well,
equivalent services.
But when it gets to AI, that's where I think personally, right? And again, we're MVPs, and maybe I am a little bit biased, but I think that's where Azure is really ahead at the moment. There was a time when GCP was kind of like really good with BigQuery and like a lot of data science stuff happening in GCP, but in terms of like developer friendly AI capabilities, again, intelligent apps and that whole AI stuff for developers and apps, and I think Azure was able to capture that market this past few years.
Azure is what you think the leader is in AI at the moment.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm being biased, but I also think so. Yeah. And next one's Workday.
Workday.
So it is a bit tricky.
Yeah, it's gonna be tricky. Workday is a CRM, right? I think it's a CRM. It's like Monday.com, right? I think it's something like that. And I'm not sure if they're using Azure or AWS, to be honest. I'll just make an intelligent guess that it's AWS, because it's probably a startup that started with AWS.
I don't know about the story, but you're right. It is AWS,
Yeah.
and they're again using SageMaker. Like I said, a lot
Mm.
these ones that I've looked at, they're all seems like they're all using SageMaker. And
Yeah.
like I said, I'm not familiar with SageMaker yet. I'm only
It,
familiar
it's
with what
it
Azure offers.
yeah. So the thing is, I think the equivalent of SageMaker in Azure world is the Azure ML Studio, but because ML Studio is still a PaaS-based service, and maybe a little bit of Synapse as well, Azure Synapse Analytics. Um, but yeah, I think and yeah, I think a lot of these AWS use cases are coming from using AWS in the first place. You know, like
Mhm.
like they started with AWS like EC2 or some S3 buckets here and there, and then like they just find a natural extension of using AI as part of that, right? And same goes with Azure, pretty much, right? Like it's very unlikely that there's a maybe if when you're a new company, you're a startup, where are you going to, which cloud are you gonna choose, right? Are you gonna go with Azure or
Yeah.
AWS? It's probably a good question to ask as well. I think I might be going to Azure if your application is mostly based on LLMs,
Mm-hmm.
just because of the whole maturity of Azure OpenAI, I would say, and the community around that. Um, yeah.
Yeah, makes a little sense. I'll go with Azure too. I mean, no, I'm being biased, but I'm going to go with Azure too. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
EY,
that
the
was
Azure. I
EY.
know. I even know the guy behind that. I'm not
I
gonna
see.
name
Okay.
his name, but he's a
I
he,
see.
and he's
Uh-huh.
Canadian. um,
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
So yeah, I know it's Azure.
I mean, this is kind of like a dead giveaway already
Yeah.
because a lot of the sessions that I watched, they always mention EY as there's actually someone who gave a talk. This from EY, and they've been using the AI Foundry. That's actually where I saw
Yeah.
him, and yeah, it's pretty like we're really in with the AI Foundry seems like to the point that they had the session in the Ignite, and yeah. The last one's
Oh,
NBA.
NBA. I think that's Azure because I remember 2021 they've already explored GPT technology in Azure OpenAI way back. Uh, 2021 they used that for live transcription, or like like motion, like what's happening in the game, and then someone can like not randomly but like can generate some citations or like annotations of what's happening, as
Mm-hmm. Stats,
movements
like the
stuff.
stats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go with Azure with this one.
Azure. And Azure it is, yeah. This is a lot interesting for me because I watch a lot of basketball, specifically NBA, and I did look at it, and it's weird because maybe it's just on this in this specific work that they did. They only mentioned Azure Open API service, but it
Yeah.
probably is more. Probably the.
Yeah, the thing is, they've been very early as well. I do remember it was just GPT-2 back then, not even the 3.5 model, and they've already is an adopter of that technology. So, yeah, that's why I know because it's one of those things that that was like the first use case that was kind of like highlighted by Azure OpenAI way back 2021. So, yeah.
I see. Well, from what I read, it was really to, at least in the NBA app, makes things personalized, and the notifications that you get are personalized based on your viewing habits. And yeah, like you would get notifications specifically for this player if you watch the team a lot.
Mm.
So it's pretty cool. Yeah, and a lot more probably. Like you said, there's like a lot of stat related. Probably they're doing a lot of analytics or I don't know, a lot
Yeah.
of things probably. But yeah, it is Azure. So you did five out of five on both TikTok times. So congratulations.
Yeah,
And I don't
thanks,
know
thanks.
when we will see that again, but at least this time, you did it really well.
Yeah.
I mean, I think last episode you did got it perfectly as well. Yeah.
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 Yeah,
I think
I
that's
think yeah,
it for.
it's just that it's just a
Mm,
level of deduction, right? Again, it's just a
yeah,
matter
yeah.
of deduction, and I think, and also if you also see some patterns here, right? Like with Azure, because Microsoft has been there for a while, right? Like a lot of
Mm-hmm.
American companies, obviously, are Microsoft companies, aka that means they're also Azure companies. And if you look at enterprises, then most likely they're also Azure shops,
Yeah, yeah.
right? But startups who kind of like went like especially SaaS based like Workday, Monday.com, maybe they were born during the AWS SaaS based era, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's pretty much it for this episode. You know,
Awesome.
I have a lot of things that I wanted to talk about in the Ignite, and maybe we'll have a part two for that. Especially, the
Yeah.
vector search
Oh
and
yeah, yeah, yeah. We can
possibly,
talk about that.
yeah,
Yes, yes.
in the future. Yeah, well, probably in the next episode. Of course, we'll have to figure out what to talk to about. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it for now. We enjoyed
Yeah.
today's
Yeah,
session.
thanks for
Hope you enjoyed,
preparing this,
Michael.
Brian. Yeah, like again, it's
Yeah,
a good brain teaser for me on a Monday
yeah.
when we are
Oh,
recording this.
my pleasure. Initially, when I did all these quizzes, it was too easy. I know you will get those. It was too easy, and I made it hard, but you still got it.
Yeah. All
Yeah,
right. Thanks.
yeah. Well,
Awesome.
we'll see you guys. Thank you guys for
Thank you.
listening, and yeah,
We'll see you
we'll
next
see.
time. Stay safe. Bye bye.
All right. So we're now jumping into the TikTok time. Are you ready, Michael? Yeah. Well, this one is more of like a set of questions, telling two truths and two lies, or rather one lie, and it's Azure in general. So it depends on like which one you think is. Uh-huh. This is absolute truth. These are descriptions of services, and you know, yes, un- yeah, unless there's some updates that happened, but these